Guys and girls, how are we all going today?
We are chirpy as can be.
Practically perfect in every way.
Practically perfect in every way.
I've brought everything.
Come on,
Stop singing. I've brought everything to keep me upright today. If we don't finish by 12,
You're going to complain, are you?
I'm going to complain and leave and protest.
I think that's actually admirable. Look, we've got a very good set of papers, but it needn't be ones that delay us too long. So if folk are happy to aim for that objective, I'm comfortable with that as well. Josh, could I invite you to open the camera? Would that be appropriate?
It's time for some PD, Bruce. But yeah, I'm more than happy to do our Karakia for us this morning. Me no i tātou ahe honore korore ki te atua he maunga rongo ki te whenua he whakaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa. Amene.
Amene.
Appreciate that. Well, welcome to the meeting of the 5th of December, the final one for the Risk Committee anyway. And Gisborne, how many more council meetings have you got to go between now and
Next week, one. Yeah.
next week? One. And so this is your second last meeting.
Yes.
Oh, look at that, Eddie. That's good.
I've got sustainable
Isn't it the TRM?
TRNP is on the 18th.
but some of them
Still not happy about that. Yeah, we've got a few more.
You've got a few more to go. It's called life, isn't it?
Yes.
So I guess there we go. Look, it is certainly the rundown to Christmas, and I'm deeply grateful to staff for the work that they've had keeping this meeting going right up until this stage. I appreciate with everything that's gone on in the year that it's been a good challenging year. We'll come to that probably when we talk a wee bit about the broader issues of the risk environment we live in. Any apologies? Looks like we've got a full turnout actually. People can stay. You've told me that it's going to be 12 o'clock. Otherwise, it won't be an apology. It'll be a what is it? A coup. Is there any matters that are coming up that you need to note your importance for? No? Look, I just would like to note one very minor one because I've already spoken with Pauline this morning. We get to aspects of property risk. We may talk water. Your consultant, Kevin Scott, is a good professional colleague of mine. I actually sit in his offices when I'm in Wellington, and his secretary, Phil, is my EA. So that's the extent of the relationship, but I just would like to note that for what it's worth. It doesn't, I don't think, in any way impair any discussions we may or may not have around water reform. I just want to reflect that, please. We have the minutes of the 9th of October in the pack. I'm going to move that we take them as a
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Riet. Is there any matters of correction or adjustment that you think need to be noted from that? Pretty good, well written.
Yep.
Thank you. In which case, I'll move to true and correct record. I have a second. Can we, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Brilliant. Move to the action register. One item on it, which is comparing the council's performance with regard to other treaty commitments. You've got advice there, Kim. I take it we treat that as sufficient at this stage. This is a matter I think that I suspect we'll keep monitoring as we go on, although reading what I've seen elsewhere, the dedicated plan, improvement, if that's the right word here, seem to be doing pretty good. Have we got sufficient advice at this stage to understand where we feel we are relative to the rest of the sector or other public sector entities?
Can I just add to that I have met with Jean on this, and we would rather look at some of the questions more directed and look at the targeted approach to those councils in the new year, so that it informs where we're going operationally with our risk management framework as well. So just an add to that note.
So in this basis, do I count this as closed? Yes, that's what I thought. Thank you. That's good. So that's one item off. Okay, if we could then look at our work plan, please, on page 11 of our agenda. Again, I went through it pretty much the way we are. Our first date in the new year, Jill, is what? Roughly speaking, we've agreed on that? It's in March, isn't it? Yeah, okay. So look, I think this pretty much signs off the year in the area that is fine. So, and we'll start a new year. It'll be a short year with the elections coming up, so I guess we only plan out as far as October, Nadine, and then we wait and see what happens after that. One of the issues from a work plan perspective we'll have to consider is actually do you try and get in the sign off at the end prior to the elections. Headspace wise, that's always desirable. Pragmatically, that may be a different story. But, while we don't have the next meeting's agenda on that one point, I just wonder if that's something that I could just signal that for a March meeting, where I'd expect to get Stuart's arrangements. I think that decision around what is possible and desirable is well worth nailing now. Okay, look, I don't think there's any reason to delay looking at that work planning. We've had we can work on things. Okay, leaves of absence. Do we have any? I got stymied yesterday. I sort of glided over that one yesterday. So I do want to have a leave of absence. Is there any leave of absence needed? What about acknowledgements and tributes? Does anybody wish to acknowledge or event at this stage?
No, I think we've had such a turbulent 4, 5, 6 months, and every month we've acknowledged some unfortunate passings and what's happening in our region. So I just think everyone is ready to unwind and have a bit of a break.
Great, thank you. I haven't been advised of any public input or petitions. I don't think, Nadine, there's any extra items we need to add to it. I don't think we're in the mood to add extra items, so that's good. Nor have any notices of motion. I'm not in Wellington. And adjourn business. I don't think there's any business. But it's got half the meeting over. Right, can we move to the insurance update, please, Andrew? Very interesting paper. So in your hands, buddy.
The Chair, kia ora koutou, and thank you for the opportunity to present the insurance report. I'll briefly provide some highlights from the report before any questions. And the highlights are Council has completed its insurance renewal for 1 November 24. Insurance premiums brought a 7% premium increase across our 16 policies, totalling 2.09 million. That was largely due to inflationary, and against the 24-25 annual plan, insurance premiums are up $84,000. An outstanding task was Council increased its earthquake cover for infrastructure by $100 million, covering 52% of the underground assets. The cost for this was $30,000 to purchase $100 million worth of cover. The February 23 recovery claim for fall over assets is still progressing with NEMA and the insurer. And to date, 9.01 million has been received of the total 15.7 million for the claim. Lastly, a progress update on each task as part of the insurance strategy is also included, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Andrew. Appreciate that succinct summary. Folk, do we have questions for Andrew? Yeah, go for it, Larry.
Yeah, just on page 15, we've got the policies and the increases that they've had. I just want to know why the corporate travel one has increased by 25%, please.
Through the Chair, corporate travel is a policy where both staff, when they fly, are covered under our insurance corporate travel policy. It also provides a benefit to staff, councillors and their whānau should they decide to go on travel, because we provide a small savings for them and have comprehensive cover for staff and their whānau as well as councillors. Each year we have to give basically a forecast of how many days we think staff and councillors and whānau will use. naturally it has had a good uptake and more people have travelled since COVID. The good news is each year if travel goes down, we get a reduction. If travel goes up, we get an increase. So it's fit for purpose.
25% seems quite a lot. What in monetary terms does that equate to?
$1,000.
Sorry?
$1,000.
$1,000.
So while there is as it says, the percentage-wise, but it is only that, and it should be realised that if the corporate travel is allowed to use that, if they're using for private travel, they also contribute to those kind of costs. So there is a kind of neutral benefit. So significantly it has increased, as so has the travel insurance has gone up itself. But from COVID, people were doing more teams, so is that, but it is $1,000.
Thank you. There's other ones. The excessive layer liability.
Oh, exactly.
Is that what you're going to ask?
I was going to ask too.
Yeah, could you actually, what is that?
So that is a liability insurance cover, is that one there for excess layer. It is actually for 57 councils nationally that are under that cover. So we have a liability cover up to $15 million, just in standard liability. If, unfortunately, we got a large claim, we have what they call a secondary layer, where we could get into what is 145 million for a group of councils. Yeah. That's what that excess layer policy is for.
Right. Okay. And just the other one, when you look at this, the big increases, 33% for machinery breakdown. Is there any particular area that is causing grief? With particular machinery?
And also it's only $3,000 in dollar terms. So while there is a percentage, there may be that we have also more equipment and some of the other pumps that we increase with it. So you'd have more. And so some of it is the value and the increased number of pumps. Most of it's infrastructure. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Critical infrastructure that is likely, to fail. So that
pump stations and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that Larry? Colin, did you want to?
No,
your question been answered.
Same question.
Any other questions, folks? Just, Andrew, I think we need to devote a bit of time to this. I think in March, it seems like within the report there is a substantial amount that you're planning to bring to our March meeting, and I like that idea. The thing that interests me is, firstly, thank you for reporting on what we actually have obtained, and appreciate the questions my colleagues have asked. I'm always interested actually in the strategy, and it raises some questions for me around the level of where does our risk position lie? Do we keep risk? Do we try and pass it off, etc.? And there are one or two matters that are happening inside the phase that you're doing with the strategy work that you obviously, and I'm glad you are planning to bring back in March. So I think we need to do that. Could I suggest that it's not a requirement, perhaps you might even want to consider Aon being present as our brokers as we try and deal with some significant strategy questions that you're asking there, and which are being asked elsewhere around the sector as well. So that's really helpful. Good. So, folk, I have a feeling that there are no questions.
I can move the paper, Bruce.
Sorry?
I can move the paper.
Do it a second. Thank you, Josh. Let's see if we can check what my motion is, which I'm sure is to receive your report. Thank you, Andrew. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Thank you for that. Could we come to the risk and, the council strategic risk?
Hello, everyone.
Can I ask you to speak up a wee bit, please?
Sorry.
Thanks. Quiet.
It's very unusual that I've been asked.
Turn it down, please.
No, I'm going to go.
That's enough, yes.
Just some high levels to report really. This paper was produced about 6 weeks after our last meeting, so just wanted to share with you that the current residual risk levels have remained the same for our 8 strategic risks and our 3 operational risks. Table 2 highlights that, but there is a change just in terms of how I structured this report formatting. So I've listed the residual risk, the risk appetite, security, the risk appetite levels in severity order. So it's easier for you to look at when you're referring to this document and see at a glance. There were some minor updates to some of the reports, mainly the infrastructure asset management. There's a change of date to the work services delivery plan, which is now September 2025 as opposed to March. Treaty commitments, just a little bit more detail explaining where we're at and what we're doing within the team. And the civil defence emergency management, there's just more detail around the review that's taking place, just to provide more background to what's happening there. What's important to note really is that alongside all of our risks, we will be continuing our risk assessment reviews and regularly reviewing and monitoring as we go ahead. Obviously, aware of the risk environment is changing, particularly in the regulatory and legal compliance world. And I think in terms of the work that we've all done with regards to the strategic bow tie and the 3-year plan critical assumptions, that's something we'll be looking at on a regular basis that alludes to that area in particular, but obviously on any emerging risks that come through. And I guess it's identifying these, as we're always talking about, any of those risks that's going to or may stop what we're trying to do in achieving our plans. What this paper also highlights, and I took it as an opportunity just to share with you, the operational side. So we spent a lot of time over the last few months talking strategically, but to embed all of this, it's important for us to roll this out within our own staff. So we're currently looking at reviewing policy, which was due this year, which will inform our risk management framework. From that risk management framework, we plan to roll out an education and communication plan with staff so that we all understand what we're talking about with risk, where to go for information, what that means to everybody, and also an ease of reporting across the council. So we are considering we're looking into a dashboard build, but that that's at the moment, and it'd be great if we can have that. So I keep getting told off my ambitious plan, but by March next year, I'd like to be able to provide a little bit more information about where we're going operationally, because to me, we've done a lot of work strategically, and we've obviously got to keep looking at that. But for that to stick, and that for us to be comfortable with that as an organisation, we need the support of the communication and our staff to understand what we're talking about, where to go for information, and obviously we'll be sharing that with you as well. So that was just an opportunity for us to share that with you, and I'll provide more of an update next year.
Yes, another. So we're building up. We're having a short meeting today to build up our March meeting. So sounds like you better bring your sleeping bag to the March meeting. It's going to be good. Just one little bit of advice, Kim. I've just sat through 2 meetings, one at BIPAR and one at South District, where we have reviewed and adopted a new set of policies, particularly around the risk management framework. I'm always a big believer in being borrow steal. If you needed to be borrow steal, I suggest you catch up with my good folk at BIPAR. That's been the source of most of my stuff. You're also along with Gisborne. Refreshing. Have a look at what they're doing. They did it. We did it at our last meeting last month. So it's sitting there, probably ready to steal. No, borrow. Okay. Folk, questions for Kim, either about the paper, and I think you want us to have a look particularly at the strategic risk around strategy itself, achieving what we've got to do. I'd like to just spend a couple of moments looking at that. But is there anything I would like to raise about the paper? Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, thanks for the table on page 31. Just the assessment of risk, how does timing work in that assessment? I see all the dates up the top are all different dates. So is that the assessment date? And also, if you are assessing seriousness, is it by a certain date if A, B and C don't happen? So how does that all tie
It is a
in?
snapshot. Those are the dates of your actual Audit Risk Committee meetings. So that's just for ease of comparison, for you to see of the change. We start collating, well, this will be the first time I've done this, but I will be meeting with the teams prior to the date that we have to submit the report to you. So it's the information prior to that, and obviously in this meeting I can alert you to any changes if that comes in between that time frame. But it's the time schedule that we work to delivering the report for each of the Audit Risk Committee meetings.
And the assessment of serious by a date, is it?
That's at that time, but that obviously that will change and could change in between me writing the report, drafting the report, submitting it to you, and presenting to you. So we could provide an update then.
I always struggle with the line between major and serious because they're both they both sound pretty crucial. Yeah.
So there's some work going on around, and the risk management framework will inform that around maturity of where we're at as an organisation, and also an understanding of what those different appetites mean.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Any other questions for Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. So it was less of a question, and actually, first I wanted to make a statement in regards to page 30 and page 31 about the reformatting, I guess, of those tables. I really like it because in terms of what I'm looking at, if they're still in their hierarchy or the order, I'm actually kind of going, how to say it, read one there compared to this, read one here. So I do really like it. Thank you. And in terms of the snapshots at each of our audited risk meetings, I like that in regards to, it's like financial projections, right? You're able to track the movements and shifts. I did want to ask a question just generally of the Dean and staff in regards to page 41 around the strategic risks, around the strategic priorities. And I guess just understanding how we as an organisation utilise this profile in order to inform our decisions to ensure that we're meeting the things that we've gone out to, or that we want to achieve that are informed by this.
Thank you, and through the chair, that's a really good question, Councillor Wharehinga. We had a discussion about this on Tuesday, this exact thing around, we have our risk framework, we have risk appetite, and we talk about risks, we think about risks, but are we consciously embedding them into everything that we do, and how do we know that? So that was a really good conversation for us to thrash out, and even as we were talking, there was another risk that we identified to put on our risk register. So I guess that's that is part of the work that Kim and will be working with us to make sure we're more considered in our approach to risk. When we've got, as we see in our reports to council, that we say, here's these risks we've identified, so we've got prompts to do that, but it's are we actively managing those risks? That's the question, and that's the work that we've got to really look at to assure ourselves that we are doing as much as we can to manage them. So, short and long, we have all the frameworks and reporting in place, but I think it's that next step around the culture of risk management to do some work on.
Just supplementary, it's more of a supplementary comment. It's around and I know that I'll be speaking to the community in regards to this because we're from the East Coast, we're very practical, but it's that balance, right, of knowing what the risk is, knowing the range of things we can do to manage that risk and kind of putting it into the appropriate place. I mean, we all agree that once upon a time there were codes for days, just to use that as an example of risk management strategy, and we've been quite vocal in region in regards to the utilisation of those and a reasonable response in regards to risk, but that mitigates that risk. So that's why I was thinking of all those things when I was reading this bow tie. I just want to put that bow on there as well.
Josh, a critical point from my perspective is two things really stick out of it, because I want to come back to indeed what you just talked about. Firstly is the heat map. So if I go to page, sorry, this is a statement, not a question here, but more than welcome to comment. We've got 4, indeed treaty commitments outside our, okay, we want them to be inside the curvy dotted line. And we're sitting with them up there for at least 2 meetings, if not longer. In fact, I think they've probably been assessed as they're nearly from the start. There's an issue here. It's it's not like the Stockholm syndrome. We get used to this. We think, oh yeah, okay, cool. But one of them, for instance, is finances. And are we happy that it's up there? Now, I look at this and I would say that we could probably just about put this into any local authority and they'd say, oh yeah, that's us. So, cold comfort, but we're not much different to anybody else. The question is, and it comes back to your one when looking at page 41 over the bow tie. The critical thing for us as a committee is the bottom box, which is the controls. And then the thing I would like to make certain as we go into the new year is actually what assurance can we as a committee have that those controls A, are complete, and B, are implemented, and C, effective. So this is where I hinted at to the team when I met them last week. We need to have a discussion around what we do for an internal audit or a verification process to understand that these controls are actually working. Because I look at Kim's assessment, I don't actually have too much trouble with the causes and the impacts, which is the right-hand side of the bow tie. What I'm interested in is, have I got an organisation that is actually implementing what it says it will implement? Because if we do those controls, we say it brings it from a high level, that inherent risk score, down to something that's acceptable. So that bottom box is the critical thing for us as a committee, to be able to say to your colleagues, we know these controls are in place. Actually, there's also a question which would happen with a deep dive, are those controls sufficient, by the way? Could we do more? We could always do more, but it's on a sort of a benefit cost ratio. Could we do more at the right price, and would it for a reasonable gain is the other thing we should be doing. So that becomes a critical part of looking at this. Is the bow tie at the top is pretty easy. Yeah. The critical thing is, are the controls at the bottom, or the mitigations to reduce our risk, the right ones? Yeah, I think they are, by the way, Nadine, in this case. So, well done for the deep dive. But the hanging question for me is, are we living them? In other words, are we implementing them, and are they effective? And we need to know that for all. This is where somewhere Kim and perhaps again, we're making a big March meeting. We actually possibly to sit down with about 10 of them, and actually this comes back to your risk management framework. How are we living this as an organisation? As I say, I can accept that some things at this stage will be up there, and I don't actually, finances are a tricky one at the moment. I can understand that they're outside our range, but if we look at the actual bow tie for finance, we should be looking at the bottom box. Are we doing enough? Do we feel more should be done? And that's a prerogative, dare I say it, of council. Okay, good. Yes, Colin.
Can I make a comment following on, I think, from what you were saying is, and that we've got so many that are in serious and major, and a lot of those, I presume, are a result of not having the right people in the right place. So it seems incongruous to have people and capabilities falling to moderate when these others are serious. And could these other problems be tackled if we had more people and capability.
Can I just answer? Most of the ones that are in serious is basically, as you said, alluded to before, is what is your risk appetite? When you went through a bit of the framework, probably that risk appetite was pre-Gabriel. And so where we consider anything that is in the serious is anything that there may be a loss of over $2.5 million. And immediately the insurance difference for the damage that we actually had to our network put us into that serious. And also, as we know, that we had assessed that had $1.1 billion worth of damage after Gabrielle, and we've probably got about 400 million on our roading network that now allows us to reinstate it. So we're still, from that definition, it puts us in that serious. The question that came back at a later stage, do we need to revisit those risk appetite in terms of what is their normal operations that we are operating as we transition to where we will be in perhaps 3 years. So one part of that is to come back as a sort of revisit your risk appetite, revisit those ongoing basis of strategic risk, and at what point do we do that? Some of the things that we were going to, and it may be wrong in terms of the timing, but as you can consider, was to do that with the new elections, as opposed to in the midway during the year, is when you have your councillors and they can go through that process. So that it goes hand in hand. And in terms of the most of the metrics with regards to people and capability, it is a turnover metrics, and whatever that turnover metrics is, if we're underneath it, that means it's considering that we're unmoderate. But there is the other conditions is if we need more resources, which is into the financials to do the work that we actually have to do, have we got enough? So just there's a little bit of a difference, the different metrics, and what was deemed measures that you were, what point does it put it over to serious, what is moderate, what are the differences from the path that where we are, so yeah.
Well, I think if I could again add comment, looking at this, those are out there mainly because of externalities that we face as a council, as in contrast to, shall we say, own goals. And I'm not certain that they're all, I mean, Cyclone Gabrielle, which is such which is an overwhelming event. That's why we've got recovery sitting outside our comfort zone at the moment as we try and get all those bits and bobs together. Finances, you've stated quite rightly that the issues around a sustainable way forward for water, or three waters, is actually a critical challenge. Bear in mind that when you start looking at three waters, you will also, I presume, are thinking about actually what does the residual count and what does that look like, and is it fundable? So, and look, asset management, well, that also affects asset management, sorry, that is asset management. So I'm comfortable, Colin, comfortable is the wrong word, I accept why it's out there. Again, it comes back to that discussion about what is, you know, my so-called white box, what other things are doing, how do we know the organisation is addressing those? It's the critical question, Colin, as a committee that we need to be aware of. If it came to it, we can't address it because we haven't got people. That's a good discussion to have here. Yeah, Tony.
I'm so glad you made that statement, Bruce, because I've been wondering where in this is the information, or where's the pipeline that says that we do these things in the box, we will pull those back in. You've asked, are we doing the things in the box? And my question was, even if we did the things in the box, will we still pull them back in? And I think you've probably just addressed that now. And is there always going to be something sitting outside our comfort zone? Yeah. Are they inherently going to sit outside our comfort zone? And I think given the relationship between those four sitting out there, Gabriel and Hale, maybe they'll pull back in the 3-year plan. But yeah, it's not a comfortable visualisation, the heat map.
No, it's not. No. And I mean, to be honest, as your independent chair, I don't like sitting here with this on the official record without us having some assurance we can move it down. But that's the real bite. If these really count, if these are the uncertainties which are stopping us from achieving our objectives of the 3-year plan, we should pile into these. And I'm confident the Dean is piling into them, but you understand what I'm saying. We need the assurance that we're piling on them.
Yeah, these shouldn't be sitting out here in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
Or if we're doing everything right, shouldn't they be slowly dragging back towards the comfort zone?
Sorry, through the chair, I think that is the question, because if that is the case with our financials, our asset management, and our recovery sitting out in the red, then I'm not going to deliver your strategic priorities, actually. If we were, because they're so fundamental to the delivery of strategic priorities, your finances, the recovery is your strategic priority. So I am really interested in that's a conversation that Kim and I might pick up offline around the externalities, which has been set by M&A.
Oh, sorry.
If we cannot control that, then is there a way to reflect what we can control from a risk lens, rather than just leave it all on the ends?
Oh, look, and I think if the externalities are such, they are what they are. I mean, with David, health and safety, I often have a debate on this with David, but actually, I think we actually have it in this room, which is actually when that event happens, we know that here, it is always serious. You can't actually reduce your risk rating probably below high. I mean, I'll just check my numbers, our ratings here, because when it happens, it will be not good. What we've got to try and address is the likelihood. But if there's an externality that is affecting something, we just have to be brave and accept that. You know, this comes back to your point. How do we know? Well, there's two ways. One is Pauling's use of metrics, which I think, you know, ideally from a maturity perspective, Kim, we would try and think about what are the signs that something is under control. Now, with people and capability, in this room we've often talked about turnover of staff. It may not just be the only thing. There are other things we should possibly match in with that to actually get an assessment of really where are we at with people and capability. Similarly with finances, similarly with all of these, what is it that can tell us that we're there? And the second thing, which is much more intuitive, what does our gut tell us? Can I be honest on this one, Tony? Because it is a bit ill-defined. But that's why with Kim we need to do these deep dives, which is, does that bottom box give us comfort that if we apply the resource to have those controls in place, we've got a reasonable chance of reducing our risk environment. That's really the key thing here. Okay, cool. Anything else? Yes.
I've got one query on page 35, point 30, in the middle of that section, just around the introduced in August, introduced an evidence-based approach that required all project submissions to demonstrate how outcomes align to the four articles of Te and Waitangi. The approach has also included midway and end surveys. I'm just querying the actual need for all projects, because we've had conversations around the capability, the capacity that tangata whenua have got to actually get involved with a lot of this stuff, and I thought we were going to go and talk to them about what specific things they wanted to be involved with. So I'm looking at the workload for the team and also increasing the team. Is that actually necessary?
Page are you on?
Page 35.
Page 35. 30.
This is the treaty committee.
Look, it might be just out of ignorance, but I'm just really aware of the workload that is involved with this. And originally we were talking about things that was around water and that sort of thing. But if we start talking about every single project we are going to be doing within council, does not a lot of that get covered just under normal public consultation?
So there's a question, is this too much work for the staff to carry out?
Well, and is it necessary? That's all I'm trying to say. I don't see the point of doing work for the sake of doing work to make ourselves feel good if that is not actually required. And when we say, we've got a statement saying all projects submissions, I'm just querying the relevance of it.
Through the chair, so this is about the risk in terms of our treaty partnerships, and so in order to kind of step into this space, we need to understand what it is our treaty partners want from that relationship and their interests across our projects. I mean, I think maybe your worship or Councillor Cranston could talk to the meeting that we had yesterday with the local leadership body and their interest in all the projects across the council, and also everyone having a sense around what is being invested to achieve partnership outcomes. So this is this work is necessary for that space, for the outcomes that have been described and desired by council.
And it is if you think the LLB committee was created, was it 12 years ago, Nadine? Yeah, 2007. And it's only now really taking off, and yesterday you could see, Andy, the interest in what we do and how that affect relationships. And also it is a statutory right of our iwi partners. You know, that committee that we formed is part of the settlement. So for them to be part of what we do, and it is a big piece of work for us as a council, and it will affect that bow tie as well, how well we do it. And it isn't a one-way relationship either. I do know that our iwi partners also need to lean in from their side, but I think what Nadine is saying, that it is it's a big piece of work. It is, and it's ongoing. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I've had this similar concerns over the years, but the longer I go, the more I realise that. From what I heard yesterday, we've actually got to be right at the front foot of all this stuff, because a lot of our inefficiencies have been going down a pathway and then having something happen where the inefficiencies come because we haven't done what we should have right at the start. And I think the LLB is going to be really good for that aspect. I mean, take something like the pathway we lost down by Paukahi there. It was so far through the process of getting there. And then it came to a stop because we hadn't followed the process right at the very start of the process. And I think any work that we do with the LAB is about getting our processes right from the start. And saying all projects, I hear what you're saying there, but it may be just a cursory glance at those projects, but ensuring that it has been run in front of the tangata whenua first, rather than going down a pathway and then have them come in and say, hey, you know, we don't like where you're going with this. So it's about front-footing stuff.
Okay, thank you for that.
As a council, we're committed to that.
Yeah,
that's what we committed to. So that's the mahi we're going to do, and I'm really stoked that I'm really stoked with paragraph 30.
Yeah, it's a policy position, isn't it?
It is.
Well, I understand. I mean, it's also in how you address your statutory obligations. Okay, any other questions or points for this? Been a very good discussion. You can see that we advance this further as we go down the track. And look, I would like, if I could just note, Kim, you and I probably should have further chats. It's great to have you on board, by the way, doing this. So I'd like to perhaps think, how do we advance some of the conversation we had this morning? This mythical March meeting, which is going to take all months. I thought it was overnight, but now it's 4 months, so there we go. Do I have a person prepared to move that we note there? Thank you, Josh. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Riet. I'll put the motion that we note. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carry. Look, thank you for that. It does actually also reflect a real interface in terms of our assessment of where we're at with risk with Nadine and you. So it's important that we put a conversation up. Okay, we move to Untitled. I think we've got Tina and Mel probably online.
So I'll just introduce it if you like. While we have Mel just to introduce, give a little bit of an introduction to the paper, Tina will probably give a little bit what we're doing in the place that with International Fraud Awareness Week, and also Tim, and you've got Libby. Libby, with being there with any information with the Wapiti audit. So I'll let Mel start first, and then they can have a cascading if there's queries afterwards. But Mel, do you want to?
Morena tātou.
In your hands.
So I'll take the report as being read. Just noting though that there is a typo on paragraph 6. It should say today's Audit and Risk Committee, not Finance and Performance. Largely, the internal audit resources have been deployed into the Technology One program over the last 6 to 12 months. That's been a key focus. I'll let Tina talk to the fraud and awareness work that she did recently through the Serious Fraud Office. Did you want to talk to that one, Tina?
Morena tātou. International Fraud Awareness Week was the 18th to 22nd of November, so the second to last week of November. So throughout that week, we collaborated with the Counter Fraud Centre at the Serious Fraud Office, as well as the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So throughout that week, we provided information via email to all staff, basically promoting anti-fraud awareness, and education and resources were provided by 3 webinars that we presented from the Serious Fraud Office, as well as some interactive activities and videos provided by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, basically just highlighting fraud personas and things to look out for potential fraudsters that could be lurking. So that was quite successful, I think. Yeah, so that was just a couple of weeks ago.
Thanks for that, Mel and Tina. That's great, and indeed, Pauline. 2 questions on the work so far. I think you said Libby is the person that could answer my NZTA question. Oh, sorry, John. Oh, Rob. Sorry. Thank you. You guys go
Just
first.
on just a bit of clarification, just on page 58. States for example, this is the auditors, we saw no evidence of any work being queried or amounts amended from contractors' claims. I just find that a little bit surprising.
You're into the NCTA, which is one of the, bear in mind, just to give context with it, this was the first audit that was completed after Gabrielle. We had a significant amount of emergency works. That was in November 23, so that's a report of that. In this year, November 24, there has been a follow-up one which goes back over the last 3 or 4 years more in depth. You'll get that report next year. But in terms of the report and the queries with regards to it, I'm sure, Libby, if you're online, you want to, if you can answer that one, or how do you want to go, Libby? Tim?
I'm just trying to find where that statement is made on page 58 for context, sorry.
Back on 2 paragraphs above the other emergency works heading.
Yeah.
The question is back on for 46, number 12, and the answer is 50 on page 58, but on non-eligible claims, it's under.
So the initial period after Cyclone Gabrielle, there were some transactions. So as soon as a risk is identified, it is written in this report. So there may have been some transactions where there may not have been documented evidence of work being queried or amounts being amended. So a lot of the way the system was working, because of the way we were using it, didn't provide an auditable record of the way that amounts were being queried or we were discussing with contractors verification of claims. We've now identified a better way to use the system, being the RAM database, to review and approve claims where it provides that auditable trail and presents the evidence that we are asking those questions, as opposed to informal meeting roundtable conversations that weren't necessarily documented. So that's process driven.
So Libby, this is quite an old report without being rude. It's an April report, and I think I've heard you say, Pauline, that there's been a subsequent review. So I mean, obviously I'd be interested to know what the subsequent review says. But Libby, Rob's point around that is picked up in the recommendations, which is 2.1, but there's the other ones as well. Can you give us an idea and some assurance about how these recommendations have been addressed, please?
So the recent audit undertaken by NZTA reviewed this entire audit. This audit presented to you today for emergency works will be addressed in the report coming. The verbal update we have from NZTA auditors is that they are comfortable that all of these recommendations and areas for improvement have been appropriately closed out and actioned, and they look to address that in the report coming.
The other thing, Rob, I just heard Libby's responses, and I take it from this, it's actually the evidence of querying, not that querying wasn't necessarily happening with contractors. I think it's an important point.
Yeah, that was my...
The evidence in the system that the querying is occurring is in contrast to whether it was queried or not.
Because you can, in 5 years' time, if you want to check it, it's...
That's right, yeah. What interested me, sorry, if I could carry on, Rob, one question that was naturally, sorry, for me anyway, as an accountant came out of this, was again, Libby and Pauline, I think the answer, there was, at this stage of this audit, so I stress the timing of it, there was $13 million hanging out under the minor events work category as to whether the beneficial FAR rate would cover that. I take it we have a solution to that now. Is that the case? Did we get that money?
Yes, we did. It came through in those kind of process, and we got it at the higher FAR rate, and it was confirmed. During that process, in the new year, led by Nadine and Linda, which is from NZTA, we had regular meetings to actually address these problems. How do we, for the approval process of work that we needed to do for the remaining agency works, we had a monthly meeting, and we're addressing that. How do we actually get this process a little bit easier process? But that which was outstanding was addressed, and the funding was provided at that higher rates. And just in terms of what some of the things doesn't give the full picture, but effectively total expenses when they were looking at it was around 88 million. They queried of 3 invoices of that, particularly for further information, which was just under 200,000, of which there was a miscoding of $930 of the whole 88 million. So even within that, there was a still substantive amount of things in the process, and that's kind of the quoting with it. Yeah.
I take it from your comment before to me, Pauline, that actually the amount ultimately of an eligible expense is actually quite low.
That is exactly right.
Yeah.
930
so it's not a lot.
and we took it out, and we just had in the process.
I take it, the other thing I noticed...
Someone got pretty disciplined over that.
I take it out of it, the other thing is, even at this stage, when, things are still to be solved, there's some improvement needed in categorisation, is that our controls are effective. So, it can't be, just keep the context in mind when I ask these questions. We should also note, by the way, positive things, the PwC report is sweet all next to nothing, isn't it? It's said that everything's fine, tickety boo. That's positive, well done. Because by hockey, you get a long way fast, quickly out of kilter. Yeah, folk, any other questions, please? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know where to begin, but perhaps right back at page 45, just a reminder that previously the Council had conducted internal audits on an ad hoc, case-by-case basis, and the demand for an internal audit function has often exceeded available resources. And then following this through to Rob's question, I'm also got major exclamation marks beside, in that there's a suggestion that we do not have enough staff to be checking the bills that are coming in. You know, now as a business person for 40-something years, that's the most important thing to do, is to check your bills and to check that you've got your money's worth for what you were paying. This also leads into my previous question about our risk analysis and people and capabilities is our serious strategic risk if we have things like this falling through our fingers. Following on from my first comment on page 45, could someone explain to me why there was a delay to the implementation of the new ERP system? So if I could have that question answered first, and then I could continue.
So I can just answer a couple of things. You've got a deep dive into the ERP system, into the public excluded, so they will go and give you more information with that in the public excluded. When the first question that you raised, have we got enough staff to check the bills? Fundamental to any financial system, to any other business, that you actually have a stage process and separation. And so we adhere to that, that what this is saying is a different part is their internal assurance on other parts that we can go through. So in terms of the checking of the bills, it's fundamental. The separation of delegations, finance does not come into the areas where people raise the bill or do the works. There is a person that first says, can we do this work? That's what we call an EPO. That has to be approved by the managers themselves. It comes through a secondary system that comes through and says, is there enough budget? If there is not, it comes a check back. And then it comes through the third and fourth lines of defence, which is the information that comes through here. Has the work been occurred? It comes through the finance, it checks through all of those parts, and then you go through the payment. So all of that is in place. That doesn't go away. That's fundamental to any business, and that is the core. What you're actually talking about, could you do more works into all of our other risks that is going through there? So we've only got a department of one, if you like, Tina, where she has been going into looking at the controls, which is fundamental into my management system, and she's there. When we haven't had that resource, because she's doing the control checking in there, we deploy, as we noted within the materiality of works that are occurring with the roading, we had 4 or 5 chartered accountants that were going through and reviewing the funding processes. So that's in addition to. So we deploy other people from the business to actually look to where the materiality needs to occur at that particular point in time. So giving an assurance that this is stating that our basic processes, first line of defence, second line of defence, and then you've got third line and fourth line of defence where you have the external EY comes into the review and they do their check-ins as well. So hopefully that answers your first, and the second one will be answered in public excluded in terms of more of a deep dive.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that, Pauline. Just a query too on page 56 that the auditors found and were wondering what a cleaning and service maintenance group is doing on the roundabout. Yeah, and I'd like to know as well why is it clean right, I shouldn't mention names, I guess I can, clean right services and maintenance be associated with the Peel Street roundabout. And the auditors picked that up So I think my last question or comment is that we have the auditors saying in yellow, some improvement needed in a number of areas. And it seems also that this whole auditing process has been quite delayed. It's taken a lot longer than normal. And is it taking longer because there are some issues there that we haven't been alerted to yet?
No, apologies. The report should have been presented to you last year when we received it, because it would have been in March or April, and it was in between the reports. It should have been reported to you. Should have had it earlier. The information is there, so that's not the kind of the delays. Same as with the one that is just being completed, we have it in the report, but when that is issued, we will be giving it to the next audit and risk. So that's more of a, it wasn't presented to you in a timely manner, but the report had been completed. Why there was some minor improvements when we talk about what were they had said, what was the process that we needed to do, and how did we needed to get that from the asset management system, RAM, and then how did we get that linking to the financial. I think Libby probably can give a little bit of update what was addressed in here, and the subsequent one when they gave the sign-out report, they said all of that had been addressed, and that the financial information and the information coming from RAM was at a high level. So, Libby, do you want to give any little bit of a kind of that? But the report will come to you next year.
Yeah. So, can I just before Libby jumps in, if I may, through the chair? So, just going back to the question that you asked around the invoicing. So that. It wasn't that there was a cleaning company working there, it was that it was a miscoding. And just going back to the volume that we were dealing with, the system, the way the system works, which we can comment on, which is quite complex, and trying to unravel what is emergency works, what is your BAU works. And in some cases where it might be an emergency works, the team might be also going in there and doing some enhancement works, which then became quite complex in unravelling the invoices that were coming through. So there was a whole back system in here. Just in terms of the report, it was the assessment that was done in November 2023. The finalised report came to us this year, and it's unfortunate we don't have the recent report, because it does show that controls and things. So I wonder if you could talk to Lib.
Just in terms of closing out that one transaction you raised, I think leaning into what Pauline said earlier, there was a very minor transaction, and because, as I mentioned earlier, when they find one thing, it must be addressed in the report. So of all the transactions, I think, Pauline, it was about a $98 invoice that was removed, or it was a very minor invoice that was removed from the emergency works that was miscoded. So that's referencing that statement there. In terms of the closeout, I think Nadine and Pauline have addressed that. We are waiting for the report where the NZTA auditors, who are the same auditors that undertook this audit, returned again and did the follow-up audit, are comfortably closing out. All the recommendations have been implemented and successfully closed out from this report that will come.
Just one query. We've heard a few times here that this is sort of an old report and it's been addressed as a new report. Said it's ticked off. Why aren't we getting the up-to-date report coming to us?
Well, there isn't an up-to-date report right at the moment, I don't think. I think it's in the process of being finalised. And I think we're getting from Libby, shall we say, hot off the press in terms of what they're saying. We've still got to see the colour of their money, so to speak, by getting the report. But I think we've made an appropriate noise today that it should be timely, and I think we'll get that in March by the sounds of it, unless for some reason the auditors haven't finalised. Thanks, Rob. Okay, can we go to the recommendation, please, which is thank you. Changing the credit cards.
No, the change. Oh.
That's right. Sorry, I can show you. I didn't read my.
This was not internally
We're not
audited.
I'm not going to show it. It has nothing to do with credit cards. I think
Didn't see that.
we will note
The contents of the report.
the contents of the report.
Yeah, I didn't even mention it. So,
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I didn't look at it.
didn't know how that, yeah.
Because I saw a note and then carried on. Okay, so we'll note the content of the report, please, and thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Tony. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against is carried. Okay, great. David, the health and safety, please.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, all. May I take the report as being read?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. I did notice, and apologies, I've seen on the graph it says 21 incidents. There's no 21 incidents on the large woody debris, so apologies for that. In summary, I'll go through my focus. The focus continues to be the well-being of staff and contract management. This time of year generally is overrepresented in incidents. People's minds are focused on how they're going to get through Christmas, etc., etc. So it's a key one for us to actually keep those contractors focused, keep our staff focused, give them that support, and as we know, they have some difficult, challenging jobs. The Ask Your Team survey, which was alluded to in the report, was quite complimentary in the health, safety and wellbeing area. Still always room for improvement, but it's good to see a positive scores in that report. Large woody debris has undergone a little bit of a transformation and restructure. This is part of our ongoing continuous improvement, finding how we can do things better. There's a contractor review meeting on the 20th of November where we got all the contractors together to reset just before Christmas. I think those are really valuable and well participated. You'll see there's a few cases as well from case law. We obviously use those to learn from things that are going on around the country. The report includes one logging fatality, trench collapse. A lot of our contractors do a lot of digging and trench work, and also reference to the Wongaray boys fatality where the board were prosecuted. Not in the report, but I'll allude to that as well. Tony Gibson, the Port of Auckland's CEO, has just recently been prosecuted, and I'll put more details of that in the next report. There's some learnings that we can learn from this. We always take those on board and see how that reflects to council's operations, and make sure that we're ticking off all the boxes where we see cases like that. That's it in a nutshell. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take those.
David, and again, I appreciate the reporting and giving us a sense of questions for David. I probably had one that I wanted to ask. Again, I mean, look, it's thoroughly understandable report. Just the paragraph 26. I'm always interested in why PCB and I've got a paragraph 26. You noted the challenge of contractors that are on short-term contracts, and perhaps the challenge of getting data, even accurate data through on those sorts of contracts. I'm not certain you quite addressed what the solution was, or is there a solution? Perhaps that's what I'm asking. Is there a solution to this?
No, I think it's Councillor Telfer referred to it last time, that the information I'm getting, I'm not confident is good enough. I'm seeing low reporting in the large woody debris in the recovery scheme, which I think there's more to it. So it is an ongoing discussion and doing those assurance and verification trips where we ask those questions. What incidents have gone to ACC? What is actually happening down there, to try and tease out the reporting, because without the reporting we're disadvantaged. The smaller contractors, they still need to be SHE-approved, so we've got a good process in place for them to make sure they're actually a good, reliable, competent contractor. But we do find a lot of the smaller contractors, in fairness, have not got that health and safety resource within their organisations, and that is a little bit of a challenge where we try and do the best we can. It can be a challenge at times with smaller organisations that have not got that acumen around health and safety.
When does that become a matter of contract performance?
It's a good point, actually. It's an ongoing.
I'm looking here clearly for a balance, and I'm sure you are too, David. But possibly I'm reflecting on other matters elsewhere, not here, where perhaps it gets to the point where you consider whether this is an area of
Mr. Chair, I totally agree. It's something that we do a contract review when we stop using contractors and see how they perform, whether we use them again. But with ongoing contractors, we're always doing that reviews and checks and catching up with them and trying to improve them and bring them up to a level.
That's through the chair as well in terms of the approval of contractors for the process, because they have to maintain accreditation. The notification goes out around the organisation, particularly for those parts of the organisation that are engaging contractors and vendors about that. So that's another check and balance on that process as well.
So, sorry, can we just have a bit more clarification around what you said, David? You've got contractors that aren't meeting our expectations around health and safety.
No, I'm not actually saying that. I'm just saying I'm a bit dubious about I'm not getting enough reporting in from some contractors. I mean, they may be doing a great job and not getting that, not getting those incidents and near misses, but from our perspective, we need to get those information for near misses. If we're not seeing them, I'm not comfortable that we're not getting any reporting. They're doing a good job, but maybe it's that focus that I've got on health and safety, maybe a little bit more than they expect.
Can you give us as a committee some indication of the breadth and depth beyond just you're not getting reports on near misses? Like, are we talking, is it certain industries or certain provider groups, certain contractors, cultural, workplace cultural issue, do you think, or what is it?
I don't think so. If I look back into the report to safety conversations on the large woody debris, significant amounts of conversations. Those conversations are conversations in relation to what are you doing? Is it best practice? Can you do it better? So I think we do a really good job in relation to bringing those contractors up. I'm not totally unconfident, but I feel there's something that could be better. I think there's room for improvement for the reporting, and yeah, I'm confident they're doing a good job. They've gone through the SHE approval, the TOTICA approval. We've got good, competent, documented health and safety. But what actually happens out there is why we do the assurance and verification to ensure that they actually, what they say they're doing is what they actually they are doing. And that includes the reporting side.
So what's our response then to those who are not reporting sufficiently or regularly? What are we doing to bring them up to our expectations? Because that's how we manage that risk, right?
Absolutely. And those are down to those conversations, those one-on-ones with the senior members of the team or with the team members to find out why they're reporting or why they're not reporting, if that's the case. It may be not the case. There may be no reports going through, but I just feel that we should be getting more reporting.
So in some sense, the control is not that actually there's necessarily, in our expectation, a deficit of information, but you, at the moment, our control, maintaining an awareness of that and working with these contractors, rather than anything else at this stage. Rob?
Sorry, just supplementary, Mr. Chair, before I finish off. So what sort of time frame are you expecting to be in a position to be comfortable with that? Because if for example, this continued and there was an incident, looking back, people will say, well, you guys weren't comfortable with the lack of reporting and there was an incident from a failed workplace practice. And I would see our liability, actually our culpability increasing because we had let conversations last too long. So I'd like to know when's the bottom line for you being satisfied?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one that we do on a regular basis. All our contractors are absolutely aware that reports have to be as soon as possible within 24 hours, and there's a set criteria of what reporting we need. We have occasionally found that reporting hasn't gone in those criteria, and that's when we actually make those people accountable and have those level conversations at a higher level. This is what we need, and we're not getting it. In this case, we're not. So I'm comfortable, and I can give you assurances that I think they're doing a good job. I just would like to see a few more reports on around the near misses.
Thank you, Dave.
Just backing up, we're coming from some of these contractors that we're now using are established contractors that have been in business for long, tend to have stable staff and have been operators that have been operating those machines for a very long time, compared to maybe what when it's just not using subcontractors type thing. When bigger jobs come up, some of these companies we use tend to rush to pull to hire and hire a digger and hire something and hunt around the office for who wants to jump on and drive that, and that straight away is a recipe for disaster. So I think you're right. You're saying we're probably not seeing from these subcontractors the amount of accidents or near misses or whatever, but some of that can come down to experience of operators too. So I think you're onto it. You're monitoring it, but that can be an explanation for some of it.
Well, thank you for that, David. You can see it's a matter of, well, I guess I'll sponsor the discussion, but it's a matter of interest around where this is tracking. So maybe you want to pick this up again with us with what I think you point, Tony. If you're signalling a problem, we are keen to see that in some way we have greater confidence. Otherwise, an event occurring could. We don't want to see that slipping under our nose.
Discuss it at the March retreat.
Yeah.
The retreat we have in March.
Yes, the retreat.
It's going from a meeting to a retreat.
Now, up to February and March, there's a meeting somewhere. It's going. Thank you for that, David. I appreciate that. Okay, do we have somebody to move?
That's my hand up there.
Oh, sorry, Red.
One thing that is of concern to me, and Dave might be able to put my worries at ease, is worrying on behalf of our CEO with what happened with Mr. Gibson in Auckland Port. It's a first in the sector where it does sound like that, though, that there were constant warnings about certain health and safety issues. What I'm asking of you, Dave, we operate in a structure where we have a CEO who's personally liable for health and safety concerns. Are you confident that what we are doing, because we operate in a risky environment, we know that, and we can't do a lot about that, but we can make sure if anything happened, we have had the check boxes and the bow ties and the constant checks to keep our employees safe. So when I heard that on the news, I thought it's timely for us to make sure the protections we have in place keep the only person who's personally liable safe. So I would love your comment on what happened at the port and how it might change what goes on in other businesses, including ours.
Thanks. So through the chair, it's pretty clear that the ports are a really high risk, very high risk environment, completely different to our risks at Nadine, which I think are probably most of the contractors. Is our contractor management is probably Nadine's biggest risk, and that's what she needs assurances. I'm confident that I get questioned by Nadine quite often. We're doing an independent assessment through an independent auditor next year on our health and safety to ensure we have good processes in place, and that gives Nadine confidence that we have got good processes in place. Yeah, I'm comfortable and confident, but I think I said that a year ago. We still had a situation of an incident happening with a contractor. Human behaviour and all sorts of things comes into it. But I think from the context of the port's high-risk area to ours, I feel pretty assured that Nadine's in charge and gives me a good briefing and knows what's going on, and I interact and work well with Nadine in that respect. She is at risk. Yeah.
I'm happy to move the paper up.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Right, it's actually according to Jill's management and planning of my agenda, but why don't we just, for the sake of concluding the open session, just look at the proposal to go into public exclusion.
I'm happy to move us in.
Thank you, and I will second that. They will discussion on the motion. Being none, I'll put it all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against?